So hi, my name is Andrew Williams. I've been contributing to the Fyne project since it was founded 2.5 years ago now. In the presentations today and at previous events, the Fyne team have talked about how easy it is to build an app with Fyne. But today I wanted to go a step further and show how true that is. I'm going to build from scratch a full cross-platform application comprising user interface, business logic, and some local persistence. And I'm going to try and squeeze the tests in as well if we've got enough time. So we'll need a little bit of setup first. If you don't currently have a Go installation and a C compiler, you're going to need that before you can run through this code. I'm not going to go into it in detail here because it is platform specific. If you go to that Getting Started section on the developer website for Fyne, you'll find all of the details there, and it will try to hint which the right steps are for you based on the system that you're browsing from. Once that's installed, you would then need to get the Fyne toolkit installed. We use -u to make sure you're always getting the latest version, and the import URL is just fyne.io/Fyne. Nice and easy. And then open your favorite development environment. Visual Studio Code is great. Golang is another favorite. Others are available. It's your choice. I'm going to use Visual Studio this time. It is just a little bit easier, I think, to present on these screens. And here we go. Let's try some live code. I will just switch over screens. And there we go. So let's get started. I'm going to create a new folder for this application. I thought it would be great to do a notes app, something pretty straightforward. I think we can all imagine what that might be. You've got a list of the available notes on the left, the content on the right, and some buttons or a toolbar to add them, and they'll just change as we edit them. So dragging that into Visual Studio, we've got our workspace set up. I'm going to add a new file here, main.go, and away we go. Now this is a simple application, so package main is going to get us started, and a main function is all we need to have an application that runs. Now, first of all, we need to set up a Fyne application. So we do app.new, and that is going to set up all of the appropriate drivers at runtime. We then want to create a window, and I realize now that we haven't imported. If I save the file, then Visual Studio is going to do the importing for us, and then we could do new window like that, notes. You might notice I'm just using one-letter variables here. It's not something that I do super frequently because I think code should be really easy to read. But when you're loading a Fyne application, I mean, the app is always the first thing and then the window comes next. So in this instance, probably not a big deal. We will need to set some content. So call set content on the window, and we'll write that in a moment in a new function called load UI. And then we would show, because it's the first window we're going to show, I'll use the convenience function show and run, which will show the window and then run the application as well. It's important that the function you call run is in the main function, like I mentioned earlier, and so it should usually be the last thing there as well, because it's going to not return until your application is finished running. So we save that again, and the only warning we have is that there's no content. So we'll do that now. Load UI is going to return a canvas object. That is part of the standard Fyne API. It means anything that can be displayed, and so we're not committing to exactly how the user interface is going to function. So I think that we are going to have a list of notes. So for this, we will use a vertical box. And into that, we will quickly add a couple of labels. And you can see once the import is there, it's suggesting all of the different widgets that match. So we'll have item 1, and then item 2. Great. We will want content. Now, this could be a text view or something, but because we're going to want to edit these notes on the fly, I thought let's do an entry, a multi-line entry probably. There we go. And we want to split the two, so the view, the UI is going to be a new split container, a horizontal one, so they're left and right, and we will put the list on the left and the content on the right. Nice and easy. We could then return the UI. That's everything set up. But I don't want an even split down the middle. I want the list to be smaller. So let's just say that the offset should be 1/4, 0.25. There we go. So that's the very basic setup. If I just load the terminal, here we are. I can run our application, and there we go. It's pretty small though. Let's fix that. So once we've got the content, we can make it a little bit larger. So you might have noticed there that the toolkit is always packing the content on its minimum size available. We want a little bit larger. So new size, 300 by 200. That should do. Also, I think it would be nice to have a toolbar. There we can put our buttons. New toolbar. And let's put 2 actions in there. New toolbar action. We will use the standard theme here and load the one moment there. The import isn't automatically coming in, probably because I have a syntax error at the moment. Content add, and another toolbar action, content remove. And the function that we're passing here is what will occur when the item is tapped. It doesn't do anything just now. Oh, and the icon is a return from a function. Now we need to use the bar. So instead of having a list on this side, we probably want a left panel. I'm going to add a container here with a particular layout. So again, we'll use a new package here, layout, new border. Now the border layout works by specifying the top, bottom, left and right components, and anything else is in the center. So at the top we'll have the bar, and then the other 3 edges will have nothing. And then we need to say the bar and the list, which is going to be the main content. And then we will add that left part to our user interface. And if we run it again, there we go. We have our items, a toolbar, and our content area. Great. So next we want to add a note, content. I'm going to create another file here for the note, also in package main. Now from here, I'm going to make a really simple type, I think. It's a struct. We're just going to have, I think, content. Don't want to get into too much metadata in this example, but the buttons on the left are going to want to have a title, probably. So let's add a title function to the note type, called title, I suppose. Now, that's going to want to return, if there's no content, then let's return untitled. This is going to need to return a string. And let's think, if there is content, then we're going to want to return the top line. So if we have, ooh, I missed the n dot for that content. We're going to split the note on the new line character, and I've chosen split n so we don't work through the whole string. That's asking how many output parts would we like. I'm going to split just once, so there's 2 parts there. And because there is some content, we know that there's at least going to be 1 element, so we can return the 0th element there. Excellent. So that's there. Now, before we put that into our user interface, let's be good citizens and write a test. One of the ambitions of this toolkit is that it's all testable. Especially unit tests on user interfaces are famously difficult, but we're trying to support that as best we can. Might not have time to run through that all today though, but let's just put a quick one in here. Test note title, and we will import testing to pass it as a parameter. That's a standard test in Go. We will make a note with content of 1 line, and I like the assert package from Stretcher. There, Testify is the project, really helpful. I know that they're not truly needed to have a test framework like this, but I like the way that it reads. So we pass the test context in. We want to make sure that this note is the title for that note. So we will do that. Then we will make another new note, this time overwriting the variable with 2 lines. Line 2. We should probably mark it as content there. And assert.equal. We want the title to be line 1 here for n.title. Now, if we go test, excellent. So we know that our note type, as simple as it might be, is working. So if we go back to our main here, we currently have 2 fake items and nothing really in the content. So let's load the UI passing in a list of notes. Let's make that list just manually. Notes, oh, yeah, notes. Make it clear what this list is going to be. Is a list of note types, and we will make one which has content of my first note, and another many lines. Now this is just a shorthand here. We could do that if you prefer the clarity, but it's not really needed here. A little comma at the end of the line, and we'll pass the note list into the UI. So this now takes a list of notes. Now here, this box is going to want a list of items instead. So let's construct that. Actually, instead of constructing an item list, let's take a little shorthand here and just append them to the existing list. So we don't need the index, we need the note in the range of notes passed in. Let's call that notes actually. For each of those, we want to make a new item in the list. So as before, we could say the label or item is new label, and that is going to use n.title, and then list.append item. Perfect. And whilst we're at it, why not see if we can add something to the content? If there was a note, then set text to be notes content. Now, if we run this, there we go. It's loaded from the note list. Nice. Now, to be able to switch notes, we're needing to add a little button. So instead of the label, we're going to use a button. Now, we do need to capture this n variable because of the way that the for loop works in Go. So note is n. Then we can add a new button instead. And a button has a callback, which is the content. Oh, no, it doesn't. Sorry, that's an entry. Button just has an empty function callback. And when the button is tapped, we're going to want to set note to n, pretty much. Now, we don't really have a set note. And that is going to want to take a note. We don't have access to what we want to put the content into. Really, I want to just say set text n.content, but we don't have access to content. Now, if this was a larger application, you would probably have a type for the application that would hold its state, but because it's just a demo to be run through quickly, I'm just going to declare a variable here. So the content is a global variable to this application, and because we want to know what we can do, we're going to name it as a widget.entry so we can make use of it later. And now we can see that the content is working just fine. This is the content being set up, so to mark it into the global, we'll just do that, and that should work nicely. I see note isn't being used. I'm glad it pointed that out to me, or we would have had a very strange result. So note is now being used. If we go run, then that's the first note. That note has many lines. Oh, fantastic. It's looking like an application. Now, from here, we could do so much more. Really, the note list here is where we want to go. So we would need something like a new type for note list. Note list. And that just has some notes in it, like this. So it's pretty much what we had before, but we can make functions on it. So on note list, we might have add, and maybe that would return a new note. And note list, remove, and you would specify the note to remove. Now, I can't really see time to implement all of these fully, unfortunately, but our note list, call that notes. So the new note is a new simple new note there. We want to add it to the list of notes, but to the top, not to the bottom. So notes, set it up to append. Not to the end, we need to append it to the top. So we make a new list of notes comprising the top note. And we add it to the remaining list, which is notes, but we need to convert it to the var.args version. And then new note is returned. Little unit test around that would verify that it's working all right, but I'm going to quickly charge ahead. Our toolbar here would then add when it's tapped. So we have the note list up here. Notes. It's currently a list of notes. Let's make it actually a note list. Notes, notes, notes. Note list containing a list of notes. Pass that in. From here, we can say that, oh, I've doubled up on that, haven't I? Let's just call it L for now. L dot add. And when we add a new note, we want to set it as the current note. Need to just update that to the list. And this is a note list, sorry. Now, notes and L.notes. Almost there, almost there. Oh, wrong symbol. So this creates a new note, but it doesn't update our list. So the next thing we would need to do is update that list. Data bindings in 2.0 would mean that that could be done for us, but unfortunately we're not there. Now, I'm just super running behind here, unfortunately. The project that I was working on, the next step after that was to use the app preferences so that we can store and load. Every app has a preferences there, you see. And on preferences, we can load and save variables. And we could store our notes in there. Gonna have to stop here, unfortunately, and move on. But the information, that should have been a really good starter, I hope. Let's just pop back here and resume the presentation very quickly before I hand over. Here we go. Oh, I'm really sorry we didn't get that finished. Didn't even cover packaging. So if you had finished the application, let's just assume, then you would get the Fyne command line helper from that URL there, and you could package the app into a full desktop application. If you're on Mac, it would create an app bundle. If you're on Windows, it would create an executable and package up the metadata for you. And then you could take it to mobile. You would just specify a different operating system on the package command. They do need an app ID. It's part of the metadata process. The requirements for distributing on the Apple and Google Play stores, amongst others. but it's pretty straightforward. You can see the command line there. If you would like to see this project through, take it further, or really understand the full code that we were trying to do, I think you saw this was the application we were building. The full source code as it currently stands, which is that, plus you can see we highlighted the current note, and those notes were stored in the local storage. It's all available at that GitHub project. You can run it, add your own functionality, install it, test out the Fyne toolkit, no bother at all, whatever you would like to do. I'm sharing this under the same permissive license that all of the Fyne project is, so you can use it for open source or private projects. You can extend it, work on it yourself. You don't have to tell us what you're doing or share it, but please do if you would like to. Lastly, clearly I need more than 20 minutes. I'm going to be starting Twitch live streaming of Fyne code. You can find me at that URL, and hopefully I'll be able to actually squeeze it into the right time.